Good evening and welcome along to episode 41 of the Kildare Nationalist Shortgrass Sports Podcast. Pat Costello is absent this evening, so myself, Jerry McNally, is stepping in to the host seat, and I am joined by Tommy O'Connell, Seamus Dillon, and Richard Commons, who I think we're all sweating away here with this glorious sunny weather that is still shining here around Kildare. But we have a lot to get through, so we're going to get straight into the action. Obviously, last weekend saw the start of the football championships in Kildare, so that's where we will start with the National Electrical Wholesalers Intermediate Football Championship. And seeing as we have not just one but two Suncroft men on our podcast here this evening, there's only one place that we can start with. Seamus Dillon, you were at the game last weekend. I heard some of your updates on KFM. You were, I thought we were going to have to send for a defibrillator at one stage as Suncroft kind of give up the lead. League Slipper coming back strong, but in the end, Suncroft saw out a win and a super win for Suncroft, and even allowing for the injury problems that we discussed last week that League Slip unfortunately have at the moment for them, still an outstanding win for Suncroft and a great way to start the championship.
Yeah, absolutely, wonderful win. You have to feel sorry, I suppose, in one way for League Slip, but to be hit with four such injuries before the championship certainly put a dampener on their on their campaign before it even started. But in fairness to David Jordan, and I spoke to him after the game, they weren't looking for any excuses. But Suncroft got out of the blocks quickly. Two early goals from Hugh Martin, who was a revelation at centre half forward. We've seen him playing with county under 20s this year on occasions, and probably a part of that panel more so than a starter, more so a finisher, I suppose. But he fairly stepped up to the mark in his first senior or intermediate championship game, or his first game in championship, senior or intermediate championship with Suncroft, and he certainly caused problems from that centre half forward position. But it was built on a really, really solid defensive performance. Chris Phillips had reverted back to centre half back. He mopped up everything that was there, and then Tom Martin and Con Keogh in the middle of the field were really good. It was great to have Owen Lawless back on the field again. He's just returned home a few days previous from Australia, but he'll hopefully be good before the year is out. And then take into consideration the loss of Jack Setterite after about 25 minutes, and then Fionn Dowling went off at half time. So overall, a really good performance, a really good win. I have to give it to League Slip because they fought back and got back in level terms. But that last goal from Con Keogh was the crowning glory, I suppose, for the want of a better word. But it's it's an ideal situation. It's a very, very young Suncroft team. I think I wrote it's 3 starters, championship starters, and also one more that came in. So a little bit positive for the future and looking forward.
Yeah, Richard, I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, but maybe I will. I did say this was maybe a chance of an upset there, given the injury problems that League Slip had. But even without seeing the game, you must have been very impressed with that win for Suncroft, and it really sets them up now in the championship. And really, we'll talk about the Confi Stratton game shortly as well, but it really does open up that Group A now straight away.
Yeah, it does, and I think all of us kind of felt the gap between the two. When you look at their league status, one in Division 4, one promoted in Division 2, I think that gap, we all assumed that would be narrowed by the 4 pretty serious injuries that League Slip had, but I still think that was a bit of a surprise for most of us on here anyway. Obviously not so much you, but I still think Suncroft to win that was some performance, and I know League Slip are very disappointed from talking to some of their folk in the week since that they couldn't get over the line there. So yeah, big result for Suncroft, and that really opens up that group, as you say. Confi winning as well, obviously against Straffan. They play. Am I right in saying they play League Slip? Yeah, see it there. They play League Slip next, so that's one hell of a local derby, with basically a second defeat for League Slip, pretty much consigning them to the B Championship if they can't get over that. So yeah, huge surprise for Suncroft, but I think that's a great result for Confi as well, given again relegated from the league in Division 2. They've been on. Am I right in saying they were relegated? Is that correct?
Yeah, one win out of 11 games in Division 2 this season.
Yeah, so I thought, and obviously relegated from senior last year. So that's a huge fillip for them to get up and running with that win over Straffan.
Yeah, it was actually almost 2 years to the day since the last championship win. They had lost 8 successive championship games after winning a preliminary round tie against Carbery in the senior championship back in 2024. They went on and lost all 3 games in the winners group that year. Obviously, lost all 5 games last year. Had that relegation then in Division Two. Tommy had a change of management then in the immediate aftermath of the league, and they have 3 great clubmen who stepped into the breach then: Colin Chan, Connor Jennings, and Mossy McCann. But they really got a tune out of the team. They talked to the Colin Chan after the game, and you could see he was emotional. Like there were 3 lads that kind of put the club on their shoulders in their almost darkest hour, and kind of they got a real response out of the players. Straffan certainly gave it a good old go, but Confi pulled away, and actually Straffan got back level. It was still level with about 10 minutes to go, and Confi got a real impact off the bench. And Niall Carney, who's been around the block as well, and has been a great old warhorse, and Robin Breslin also kicked the point as well. And then Jack O'Reilly, who had an outstanding game, he finished with 2 goals and 5 points, and he wrapped it up with his second goal in injury time. But it's an outstanding win for Confi. But we should actually mention as well, in defeat as well, of course, for Straffan, Tom Donovan scoring 3 goals and 2 points in the first half. Actually, all in the first half was an outstanding performance from him, but wasn't quite enough. And great win for Confi.
Yeah, and I was like, I think everybody was kind of dismissing them, and in fairness, as you say, like it means a lot to these lads, and to turn around after a difficult couple of years. I genuinely was. I know Confi coming down had them as one of the seeds, but I really just had them as outsiders. Given any kind of rattle, I had Straffan tipped the weekend. I really thought they'd do it. I remember putting into a group just before the match started, and I said, keep an eye on that match, John Tracy to score 7 points. And that was a bit like, so I said, if anybody saw that, they'd be doing some laughing at me. I think John was consigned to 2 points from frees. But yeah, like, take nothing away from Confi. Like, what a boost for them, for the club, for that group of lads, for the club. Colin Chan is, by all accounts, he's loved it down there, or up there. He's a great character. He's been a good stalwart that team for the last number of years. So, for him to get a tune out of them when it really matters was vitally important as well, as they have taken a lot of hits over the last couple of years. Jack O'Reilly, again, kind of, there's a lot of these young lads kind of coming out of the blue in this championship that we might not have seen slowly come up for minor over the last year or two, but there's some of them have absolutely exploded across the 2 championships. Some young lads have really announced themselves. You see Aidan Jordan there as well on the Confi team. Another good young player, dual player, I think. And also, anytime I see Confi play, I see Neil Ryan is quite a tidy player as well. And obviously, you have Paul Devlin, to have him in the middle running things. Sure, who else would you want? On any team, a wonderful player. But yeah, it sets up a real mouth-watering match against Leixlip. I like just Leixlip lads even talking about that now, and they're getting very, very nervy. Against their great rivals. That'll be a really interesting weekend, because as Richard said there, that's it. If Leixlip can't get a result out of Confi, that's it. Whereas Confi on the flip side are looking immediately to get right into the thick of things straight from the off, when many people didn't think they would, like myself. That Suncroft result, as you spoke about, obviously, magical result for them. We've seen a couple of results for them in the last few years, where they pulled big performances out just when they needed it. I'm thinking of a couple of years ago. I'm trying to think who was it 2 Mile House or something that I think they beat 2 Mile House when they really had to, and put 2 Mile House into the relegation final. And then last year, the big performance against Ellistown. So they have it in, and it's just, when you have Hugh Martin, another man, I probably took my eye off the ball a little bit when I was kind of looking at the Suncroft team that would be coming through, and I think Owen Lawless was kept scoreless as well. So just for Suncroft to dig in like that and get that result, because it was anybody you spoke to, you said, Leixlip are missing 3 or 4 lads, so there's a bit of a chance, but you kind of in the back of your head thought Leixlip have enough depth. They really do. Just to miss a Suncroft team who couldn't get out of Division 4. Realistically, you couldn't really see it happening. So the joy of the championship, lads, first round in the bag, and some brilliant results there. That's just a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to confirm those two results then, Suncroft 39, League Slip 14 points, and Confey 214, Straffan 3-5. And as Tommy was mentioning then, that sets it up really very nicely for round two. We'll of course be looking forward to all those round two games, either on the weekend after next, on the weekend of Saturday, August the 22nd is the Confey v League Slip match, and then on the Sunday is Straffan v Suncroft. And yeah, we'll be looking forward to those games in more depth next week. That's a bumper weekend, obviously the first weekend of the Senior Championship as well. So we'll be looking forward to them next week. But moving on then to Group B, two games here. St. Lawrence's, of course, last year's beaten finalists eventually shook off Round Towers to win by 4-14 to 2-14. And Monaster Evan, who a little bit like Confey had a disastrous season last year, but are showing signs of getting back to their best. They had a pretty comfortable win over Cullen in the end, 2-17 to 1-8. But Richard, I think you were at home and tuned into Pat Costello's commentary on Clubber for the St. Lawrence's and Round Towers game. Maybe Lawrence is not at their very best, but in the end they were able to shake off a pretty dogged Tower side who looked on more than one occasion as if they were dead and buried in the game, but kept finding a way to drag themselves back into it, and still going into injury time. There was only a kick of the ball between the teams.
Yeah, actually, I had a bit of a fancy for Towers in this one. I was a bit disappointed they didn't get a little bit closer. I think Larry's had them at kind of arm's length for most of it, as you say, and the goals were important. Knowing that they were without TJ Nolan and Shannon Murphy around the middle, I thought that might even things up a bit more than it did. Towers were a little bit disappointing for me, I thought. The concession of the goals, they'll be disappointed in. Larry's, on the other hand, I think their forward line showed a good bit of breadth to it. Between young O'Dwyer, obviously comes from good stock. That's probably one of his better games at senior level, I'd say. Certainly in terms of scoring, maybe faded a little bit in the second half, but a great first half. Felix Lawler, we know all about. Scored 1-3, 1-4 as well. I think they showed why they're up there among the favourites for it. Towers again, a little bit disappointing for me. And I thought generally the quality in this one was, although it was exciting and there was plenty of goals, and it was a bit of a theme across the weekend for me. I didn't think the quality was great, but there's probably an element of rustiness to that. I mean, it must be 7-8 weeks since the end of the league for some of the teams, if I'm not mistaken. And they're playing first championship game. Some lads will have been away for a little bit of the summer, so that's probably an element feeding into that. But I didn't think the quality was great in this one and a couple of the others that I saw over the weekend.
But some really good young players in that St. Lawrence's team, Tommy in particular. They're obviously, I suppose, one of the strong favourites for this year's championship, maybe along with Milltown, certainly if you read into the bookies. And when you look at those young players there, Rory Lawler obviously stepped up. He got a good goal. I'm surprised Richard didn't give him a mention. He's normally number one fan club for Rory Lawler. But Shannon Gallagher was another one as well. I thought it had a very solid game on probably what's his senior championship debut as well. So they have those young players, and if they keep developing, and they're still missing obviously TJ Nolan and Shannon Murphy as well. So they have a wide array of talent. And Richard again touched on their attack too. When in previous years when they were I suppose hanging on to their senior status, they were very reliant on Padraig Fogarty, who was actually listed as number 17 on their matchday squad, but didn't make it onto the field. But now under attack, it's kind of a much more balanced attack and many more threats as well, even going back into midfield and half back line as well.
Yeah, they do have firepower. St. Lawrence's, and they have done for a number of years. They always seem to find players like obviously Felix Lawler, Rory Lawler are stepping up this week, but they just seem to find these players that can score from distance. They're a big 2-point kicking team over the last few years. It's interesting with these young lads and watching them develop and stuff, because it's very rare that lads hit the ground running, even coming out of under 20s, and really bolster a team to that level. So that's why obviously St. Lawrence are favourites, joint favourites for the championship. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the favourites. But it's funny because when you talk about players like that, like remember Oisin Grufferty coming up there a few years ago, like there was high hopes for him. I think I'd be really interested to see how he goes this year, because he was almost like, he was like that wing back that we were missing, that flying wing back that he seems to have put on a bit of mass as well this year. So I'll definitely be looking forward to keeping an eye on him. But yeah, I said like they're missing TJ. Obviously, Mark Glynn still in the middle there, but they're looking very, very strong. Like round towers are never easy. They're never simple in the intermediate championship. They were fairly strong as well, round towers. Which, you know, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's worrying for them. Like they were playing against the championship favourites. You know, they lost by the 6 points. There was obviously that late goal, but I don't know. I still wouldn't rule out round towers. Just, you know, picking up the 2 results that they need to get into knockout to make things quite difficult. But again, when you're talking about St. Lawrence's, the depth, the youth, you know, the big performances, the big scores. When you're looking around towers, you'd like them to have a bit more depth that I don't think they do. You know, you see on Gleeson coming through this year. He's been a huge addition. He's the big one now. He's the big addition this year. This is his first year up at this grade, up at this adult level. Obviously got on team midweek, as we'll have a look at later on. But like he's like that's the kind of thing you're looking at. Ben Ryan is in there now a few years. I think he's actually, this is his 3rd year. But they need to bolster a bit more because Jay O'Brien carries a lot for such a young man. You know, he carries a lot, and I don't know if he's fully fit at the moment either. So, you know, there's 2 contrasts there. So if they think they're struggling themselves and they think that, you know, still put up 214. I still think they will be thereabouts. But the big thing for Larry's was really tough first round fixture. You know, when they looked at the fixture list, they were probably, I don't know whether they were happy to get that out of the way or whether they would prefer, because most teams will always say they're not full strength in the first round, you know, but you have to lay down a statement like that, just like Milltown had to do as well. Maybe they did that slightly differently as well. We'll talk about later on. But yeah, good win for them.
For sure. And moving on then to the second game of that group, Seamus, I don't know if you were in Nolan's Butchers in Kilcullen there to collect your sausages this week, but I'm not sure that they would have been too overjoyed in there with Kilcullen's performance, because really they were pretty comfortably beaten in the end. And as I said, it was much like Confey last season. Monasterevin really had a dire season. They had to win the intermediate relegation final to avoid relegation from this championship, that after being relegated from Division 3. But under Gavin Holligan this year, they seem to be on the way back. They obviously were promoted out of Division 4, and from their point of view, this is a very commanding and convincing win in the end. Paul Maloney scoring goals in both halves in that comfortable win.
Yeah, Ger, there's a few lads missing in Nolan's. I'm not sure whether they were watching me coming across the road, but yeah, it was a quiet week in Nolan's, but a very, very disappointing result for Niall Timmins' Chargers, because they probably would have looked at that game as an ideal starter. And again, no disrespect to Monasterevin, because they were operating from Division 4, but and I saw Monasterevin against Ballymore in the league final. They played second fiddle for a lot of that game, and the most diehard of Monasterevin supporters would have been worried about their safety and where the season was going to bring them. But certainly turned it around in style on Saturday afternoon, and you know, they were commanding and worthy of the victory. Paul Maloney going to go forward, DJ reverting back into the half-back position. He had been playing up in the forwards throughout the league, but there looked to be a lot more solidity to them on Saturday afternoon, just looking at their team. And you know, I wasn't there, but yeah, it's a great start from Monasterevin, because you know, the 2 games upcoming are, you know, on paper really tough. Kilcullen probably looked at that as a winnable game, and you know, and take their chances over the following 2. They did get the win over Larnages last year, but I don't think the Larnages were probably going to get caught in the hop a second time around. So yeah, it opens up that group, and where now Larnages and Towers become the 2 favourites, but Monasterevin have given themselves a great chance, and if they can build on that, because I know from looking at the league final to Saturday afternoon, talking to a few people, I think Sean Kavanagh in the middle of the field, and his fitness levels have certainly come up a good bit over the previous few weeks. So yeah, they'll cause problems for either Larnages or Towers, but certainly started off as on Saturday afternoon. Great result.
Yeah, Conor Lonigan was another one who I thought caught the eye as
Yes.
well, with a couple of really good long-range points, and that 2-point scoring is something that we'll touch on. I'll come back to that shortly enough. But yeah, as you mentioned there as well, Seamus, like Group A there, Group B has 2 huge local derbies now as well in round 2. Kilcullen versus St. Lawrence's on the Saturday the 22nd, and then Monasterevin v Round Towers on Sunday the 23rd as well. So again, we'll be looking more in depth at those games next week. We'll move on now to Group C. and it was the game that got things underway on Friday evening, again between Milltown and Ballyteague. I suppose Milltown, along with St. Lawrence's, as we said, probably the strong favourites for this year, or maybe lukewarm favourites is probably better, maybe not strong. We won't go that far just yet, but it was a 10-point win at the end for Milltown, 316 to 112. Then on Saturday, Grange had a very exciting win against Nurney in a goal feast of a game. It was Grange Northern 3-13, Nurney 2-13. Richard, you were at both of those games, and on paper, it looks like a sizable win for Milltown on Friday evening, but you weren't overly impressed with their performance, but again, allowing, I suppose, the first round of the championship.
Yeah, I'm sure they weren't overly impressed themselves ultimately with it, but I mean, at the end of the day, they've won a local derby by 10 points, pulling up. So from that perspective, job done. They were very, very nervous, it seemed, at the start, particularly in the forward line. Like some of the shooting, some of the mistakes they were making just hinted at a team that was either rusty or nervous. And they shouldn't be. I mean, that's that team now, when you look at it, you can nearly pick 1 to 15 off the top of your head and be pretty accurate with it any week going out, because they've been together now for 3 or 4 years. Their experience, they've got such a good spread in that forward line and across the team generally, and that's why they're one of the two, I suppose, joint favourites for the competition. But they were just very, very nervous. They're shooting over the hour. I think and this is maybe more of from a positive perspective, they created, I think it was 41 shooting opportunities, or at least took 41 shooting opportunities, and their scoring rate was down around the 40% mark from that. So, that's a concern, but a positive at the same time when you look at it. I think that, they got it together. They never really looked like they were going to be pulled back, although Ballyteague got it back to, I think, 3 points at one stage. Could have got it back to 2, and Jimmy Hyland had a 20-meter free, and he elected to go short with it. Maybe not 20 meters, but it was certainly a close range free. Elected to go short.
Was that not? It was an indirect. It was an indirect free because the referee.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened was that
that would explain that a lot more then, if that was the case.
They thought that he got fouled, but in fairness to the referee, he stopped it for a head injury.
Oh, okay. All right.
He told Jimmy that he couldn't take the free.
That makes a lot more sense. So sorry, Jimmy. But they didn't score from that opportunity, and Milltown came up the other end, scored their second goal, and off they went from there. So, look, I think we could be too negative about it. I think there was a rustiness, particularly in the first half. Overall, their scoring rate wasn't what they would have hoped, but this is a really strong team. Like, they've got two absolute man mountains at midfield, Dunn and Sheeran, who are going to dominate a lot of the exchanges there. Both very athletic, both the sort of player that I think Kildare should be looking at going forward and putting some time into if both of them are interested. And then in the forward line, the likes of Ben Curran was superb. Like, they just Ballyteague couldn't handle him running at them. Paddy Donoghue, we know about as well, scored at something like 1-2 as well. So, it's a serious team, and I wouldn't say there was anything that, I would be overly concerned about from their performance. Ballyteague are very reliant on Jimmy. There's no question about that. That's been the case for the last couple of years. He was fantastic, particularly after the first sort of 15-20 minutes, scored 1-5. Very much their talisman, looked very lively. Gave Cian Buckley, who's a really good Milltown defender, gave him a very tough time on the night. And going back to Milltown, maybe that's one area that teams could look to make hay with, is kind of their full back line did look a little bit loose, certainly on Friday night, so they'll need to tighten up there. But yeah, good game. Then I saw Grange against Nurney on Saturday. A bit of a similarity with Grange, although probably more excuses, and that it was their first intermediate game, having come up from junior. Very much a consistent lineup as they had last year. Timmy Doyle in goals was a change, mind you. That was a late change, and he faced Mikey Conway for a penalty, which must have been two of the when you combine their ages, I'd say that's nearly breaking records. I'd say Mikey beat him on that occasion, but Nurney got off to a great start. Cathal Hackney was very good, for any Kildare fans listening in. Very lively, caught a couple of really good balls, breaking tackles. He scored the first goal. He was fouled for the penalty, which Mikey scored. So, all in all, very positive. Certainly start from Hackney. It faded a little bit. Grange really came into it. They butchered some terrible goal opportunities. They'll know this themselves. But they scored 3 goals in 4 minutes just before half time. And, that brought them right back into it and in front by about 6 points at half time. And they just kept Nerney at arm's length for the second half. No more goals. All the 5 goals came in the first half. But I think Grange, you know what you're going to get from them. They're direct. They've got good, strong runners. The Bergens are going to be heavily involved. Conal Bergen, again, just carried on his form from last year. He was fantastic in midfield. Fionn Bergen, very influential. Unfortunately, they lost Oren to what looked like a knee injury. And, the word is that could be a couple of months injury. So he's hopefully going to be back later in the championship, I'd say. But it sounds like that could be a serious enough injury.
Sorry, Richard, that was something that you wanted to mention as well, because you were kind of unimpressed with maybe the lack of medical care available. Some of those players, and there were a few injuries, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there were 3 injuries on Saturday in Hawkfield. There was David Lovely in the Kappa game, right from the throw-in, unfortunately, and he's a fellow who's had injury issues with just jumping for the ball. He seemed to tweak his shoulder. Seemed to be a serious enough shoulder injury. Whether it's a dislocation or whatever, I'm not sure. And then you had Oren Bergen. And then the third game, Donnacha Kinch went down early enough as well for Castledermot, another player who was on the Kildare under-20s this year, but had to sit it out through injury. So he's had his troubles as well. So that seemed to be a serious enough knee injury as well. So I guess, you're kind of looking around and there's no ambulance there for the whole day. So each of the clubs have to basically look after the players themselves with their own medical resources. And I think, to be fair, we all know there's volunteers involved in terms of the Order of Malta, provision of ambulances and medical people. And, it's right in the middle of the summer. And I do believe the clubs were informed beforehand that there wouldn't be any ambulance there on Saturday. So, I'm not pointing blame or anything, but I think it is unfortunate in this day and age that, you can run 3 games like that and not have an ambulance service of some sort there for players when they get injured.
Yeah, for sure. Well, best wishes to those 3 players, and hopefully they won't be too long on the sidelines, because they're all big players for their respective teams. But Tommy, just to quickly touch on round 2 there, as I said, we will be going into more depth in these round 2 games in next week's. But I think that game between Ballyteague and Nerney, as I look across there, is the only clash in round 2 between 2 sides who lost their opening round match. So already that one is a knockout tie in the second round, really, for Ballyteague and Nerney. It's a must-win game for both.
Fair play to you, Jar. I'm pulling these little nuggets. Like it is. I saw both in action. Ballyteague just weren't able to get. Ballyteague. One thing I will say about Ballyteague is that they did learn from the mistakes of the first half. Like I have to be very careful when I'm on terrace, because I can't be seen to be pulling for one side or the other. But I was genuinely getting frustrated with Ballyteague, how slow they were to get the ball out of the back. When there was players probably not loud enough, those players looking for, they were out for the ball in the middle of the field, the far side, and those players turning into contact, turning back into contact again. Milltown were brilliant at pushing really high and putting pressure on high, and they were really good at that last Friday night. They had their faults, and they'll have to improve again the next day. But Ballyteague learned at a half time very Glasgow. He's just moved the ball quicker, and they did move the ball quicker. And they were better in the second half. And I think it likes of Nerney need to look at that. How do we, Nerney are coming up against Milltown in the last game. We don't know what way that's going to go, but how things are going to be looking in round 3. But you need to learn from previous games. And Ballyteague learned that Milltown push high, and they're all full intensity, but they leave gaps then. They leave gaps to a team that wants to play it long or move it quick. And if teams have the ability to move it quick, you can absolutely take advantage of it. Ballyteague did start to do that, and then they started to try hit Jimmy Hyland with the ball. Now the quality of ball to him wasn't horrendous. There's some really good balls played into him, but they're constantly looking for Jimmy. Even if a shot was on for a Ballyteague player, he's looking for Jimmy, and he's looking for the pass. And then of course there's 4 lads on Jimmy Hyland, so There's little things like that. But it will be interesting. Both teams need to improve. Nerney were probably, I don't know. I think Grange. I was a little bit disappointed in the way Grange allowed Nerney to stay in it for as long. They held possession for long periods in the second half, over and back a lot, into the corner a lot. Kind of seemed happy enough when they went 4 or 5 points up. Like, we have them at arm's reach, but they were looking better. They were looking better than Nerney, Grange were, and I thought they should have kicked on and made a bit more of a statement. But they were very happy to hold the ball in possession. And then Nerney were looking to go gung-ho when the ball did break. But then Grange would break it down again. It was as slow. So I wanted more from Grange. That Grange-Milltown match, I mean, if anybody remembers the junior championship clashes between them going back 3-4 years ago, they were spicy affairs. So to see them two clashing again at intermediate is brilliant. That'll be a great weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Again, lots to look forward to in round 2 in Group C. So finally then in Group D of the National Electrical Wholesalers Intermediate Football Championship, and apologies, Seamus, I'm going to skip over you again and go to Richard because I know he was at this game between Two Mile House and Castledermot. Seamus was at a lot of the junior games, so we'll hear lots from Seamus here very shortly. But Richard, just on that Two Mile House Castledermot game, maybe not the thrills and spills of some of the other games around the Intermediate Championship, but at the same time a very, very solid start for Two Mile House with a 5-point win over Castledermot.
Yeah, it was disappointing. There's no question about it. I mean, even looking at the scoreline there, 111 to 9 points. I think Castledermot got 1 2-pointer in that as well. So that's kind of 7 scores out of that. 2 Mile House deserved to win. They had the outstanding player on the park, which was Tony O'Connor, who was just covering acres of ground, as he does. Like, he's
how many interceptions, Richard? How many interceptions did he?
Oh my God! Particularly, I mean, I was particularly noticing like in the second half towards the end. Like, I think there were like 3. He was back in the sweeper position. He's playing wing forward, back in the sweeper position. He must have picked up 3 in a row. Back then, but he was just everywhere. He was absolutely outstanding. Such an athlete, and no surprise, I believe he was an athlete in younger days. So there's no surprise there whatsoever. 2 Mile House were a bit leggy as well. Like, again, teams coming in after not playing for a couple of months, maybe players coming back from traveling and that sort of thing. A couple of them looked a little bit leggy, but they deserved the win without hitting any great standard overall. Castledermot, you probably know better, Tommy. Disappointing for me, at least. I thought this was an opportunity for them maybe to get 2 points on the board early on, against a 2 Mile House team that might be a little bit rusty as well. Disappointed in them generally. Just thought they kind of got very frustrated from fairly early on when it wasn't going for them, and just the errors just kept building up for me. So they'll want to bounce back now against Rathangan, but that's one hell of a tough second round tie for them now to stay in the competition essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on then to the final game, and just before we touch on that Rathangan Ellistown game, Tommy, you maybe get a word from you because I know you've got a strong fancy for Rathangan. But Seamus, just one thing that I wanted to discuss was the 2-point scoring over the weekend was hugely important in so many of the games, and there was some really impressive scores. And in this Rathangan Ellistown games, there was 5 2-pointers in the first half alone. And I'm looking there in Cedar St. Conleth's Park. It's the same pitch that the Kildare lads run out when they wear the county jersey. Like, with all due respect to the players that were on show this weekend, and the ones that I saw, that they're intermediate players, with all due respect to them, they're not on a senior county panel, and yet some of them made long-distance score taking look so easy, and there was some fantastic scores over the weekend. But what I'd ask is, how is it when we have some of the best forwards in the county in the Kildare jersey that would make things look so difficult from that sort of range?
Yeah, look, and I suppose it's something that we've spoken about on this, and yourself and Philly probably on air and off air. I suppose all 4 of us would have spoke about this and considered these situations. I suppose the biggest thing for me over Kildare's league and championship campaign is that when guys get into that shooting position, there's always an extra pass. There's like a fear for somebody to take that shot on. That's the one standout thing that I would have seen throughout league and championship campaigns, is guys just not having a go. like as if there's a fear there, and trying to work it through the lines into maybe even a goal scoring position. And we've seen that throughout the league campaigns. What happens is your half-backs and maybe Kildare have 10 or 11 players inside the 10 or 11 players inside the opposition 45, it becomes cramped. You're sucked defenders back, and then the opportunity is gone. But yeah, look, it's very frustrating when you see what's happening. I saw one and two of them actually, in fairness to Darren McDermott and Fionn Dowling, with two pointers in that Group A game on Saturday afternoon. But I think that's the most frustrating thing. It seems like a lack of confidence, or just whether it's a management thing to push the ball forward further to get into better scoring positions. But you give a ball to Alex Byrne or Callum Bolt or any of those guys, we've seen them outside of Kildare, which is taking their chances and having the shot, having the confidence. They can do it. It's there. It's in their armour. So from that point of view, Derek Kerwin again is another one. It's frustrating. So I don't know. It's something that we'll talk about probably on more occasions throughout the championship. And when the senior one kicks into place the weekend after next, you're probably going to see a lot more of them. But look, I go back to, I think it could have been actually a league final, but Johnstown Bridge and could have been Milltown a couple of years ago. It was a score fest of possibly somewhere in the region of 9 or 10 2-pointers that particular evening. And when you see it can be done, it can be done. So it's certainly something that's going to have to be worked on for 2027.
Yeah, absolutely.
22 2-pointers in the Intermediate Championship last weekend, 9 from play.
Yeah. That's fair play, Tommy. I didn't even tee that one up for you. And then we must mention Aoife Radigan as well. We'll maybe touch on it when we were discussing the ladies' championship as well. Aoife Radigan scored 3 2-pointers in one game there for Cap as well, which is an outstanding performance. But actually spoke to Aoife, and again, she kind of referenced some of the points there that Seamus was making. Just it's a lot of it about his confidence and belief. And she was just talking with the ladies' game as well, that the kind of tactical changes are developing as well. And in the men's game now, that's evolving too. And I just wonder, when the success that we saw Mayo have in the All-Ireland final, will that cause coaches maybe around the country to alter their tactics as well? But just there's no getting away for 2-pointers are absolutely massive in the game. But Tommy, just touching on that Ratangan and Ellistown game, a little bit like yourself last year when I saw Ratangan beat Ellistown, I thought, God, they could be championship contenders or even championship winners. It didn't work out last year. They beat Ellistown by that in that championship almost a year to the day by 17 points. This year, last Sunday, they won by 19 points. So are you even more impressed and even more staunch in your view now that Ratangan could be the one to lift the trophy come the October time?
Well, it wasn't after the Ellistown match last year. I said it before the championship last year. And I blame myself. And I haven't been to Ratangan since. I'm afraid to go down that direction. But I genuinely, I think they're a wonderful team to watch. They're a great team to watch, both in league and championship. They are stacked with talent. They're stacked with pace, power, experience. They have kind of all the attributes you want. That Ellistown team, they're no mugs. There is lots of talent in that Ellistown team, and for them to put up that score against that team, that's quite impressive, and it does say a lot, because I think Ellistown were kind of close to full strength probably as they could be, and Rian Team still has to come back for Ratangan. I think he was in a final in America, wasn't he? Was he?
Yeah,
he that Boston final.
Yeah.
Sam Savage came on, Maurice Curtin came on, so they have those two. I think Sam actually went off again with an injury, but Maurice Curtin went on for the last 15 minutes, so they have strength and depth there as well. Yeah,
they need to there's people from Ratangan there. They're going to be listening to this, and I was doing those prediction sheets last year, and I know there was lads reading that as well. But they do genuinely have to believe themselves, and they are a confident bunch. And they're a good group. But they shouldn't be afraid of anybody in this championship. No, I'd say the same for Larry's and obviously for Milltown, Round Tower. It's such an open championship. That genuinely everybody, we've seen it with the results, the surprise results. I mean, there's a couple of teams there that sorry, I get really bad feedback. It's like a tractor. There's like a tractor going by somebody's window or something. But there's a couple of teams I'd be genuinely worried about at the moment. That seem to be struggling for numbers and struggling for form. But yeah, that like you're talking about the 2-pointers there a second ago, and teams like Rottingham take them all. Richard, I don't know if you agree with this, but on last Friday night, Milltown had it themselves, had it in their heads that they were going to try 2-pointers, but their shot selection was poor, as well as their shooting, but their shot selection. And not only that, when they were doing it, there was a big, long, slow wind up from some of them. They'd get the ball in the arc, and the ball would be coming down, and the big owl, and that did two. So there's two things. First of all, that obviously gave the Ballytea player or defenders a chance to swarm. But also, what they were missing out on was the Milltown runners, of which there was plenty of, from the half-back line through midfield. I watched at one stage, 3 or 4 times, I'd say, in the first half, that big, long, slow wind up from there was multiple players doing it. And missing out, because they're so focused on taking the shot, they're missing out on those runners coming through. Hugh Hamilton, these guys making bursting runners. Liam Kelly made some brilliant runs throughout the game, especially in the first half. And so it's all well and good trying the 2-pointers, but at the right time, under the right conditions, with the right men getting onto them. So, I love seeing players try it, but it was so frustrating how bloody slow they were. God almighty, you don't need the big, huge wind-up. These Milltown guys are big, strong lads. Just kick the bloody ball when you get it.
Absolutely. Well, just speaking on just the last one on the 2-pointers, just to mention the one that Aaron Tehan scored. I think that was the best one that I saw of the games that I saw in Cecil St. Conleth's Park across the weekend. He kicked the free from 50 metres, and it was still kind of rising, going over the crossbar. It was a wonderful kick from long distance. But yeah, excellent win for Rottingham. And yeah, don't rule out totally Ellistown, because I know it was a big scoreline against them there, but it's one of those games that just things went against them a little bit. There was only 6 points between the sides at half time, and Rottingham then got 2 goals in the space of a minute inside the opening 5 minutes of the second half, and kind of Ellistown heads dropped a little bit then. I think they're a little bit better than that scoreline would suggest, but they do have 2 difficult ties in store looking ahead in that remainder of Group D. But yeah, so all those games, and we are left with a difficult task then of picking the team of the week, and thanks indeed to Darren and the team at Loading and Lifting, who have come back on board to sponsor our Kildare Nationalist Teams of the Week for the duration of the championship. So there you have it if you are looking on screen. The first Loading and Lifting Kildare Nationalist Intermediate Football Championship Team of the Week. I'll quickly run through them, and then we can explain some of our decisions and maybe mention a couple or 1 or 2 who were very unfortunate to miss out, because it is always very hard to narrow it down to 15. So we had Paul Clinch of St. Lawrence's in goal, probably on the basis of his very early penalty save from Max Cosgrove against Round Towers. 2 Suncroft men then in the full-back line, Arthur Bailey and Conor Keeley, and also Kieran O'Sullivan of St. Lawrence's. John Gleeson of Round Towers, Dylan Costigan of Grange Nolvan, and Hugh Hamilton of Milltown in the half-back line. Conal Bergen of Grange Nolvan and Tom Donovan are in midfield, of course, Tom of Straffan. And further forward there, Aaron Tehan of Rottingham, Hugh Martin of Suncroft, Tony O'Connor of 2 Mile House, and the full forward line then, Porrick Carty, who we didn't actually mention in that Rottingham game, but he finished with a very impressive goal and 8 points in that match. 2-goal hero for Monster Evan Paul Maloney, and then Jack O'Reilly, who was so key in that victory for Confey. To mention a couple of lads that were very close, one certainly from that I thought, with a couple maybe from Rottingham, we could have had 3 or 4 maybe from Rottingham. Michael Fitzsimons in centre back was one that was mentioned. Owen Boyle was another one then in midfield, who was actually, I think we had him in the side, but we were squeezing him into a different position and went for someone actually who played at wing forward rather than getting Owen Boyle into the team. Tom Donovan was an automatic pick, having scored 3 goals and 2 points. So although Owen Boyle was superb for Rottingham, he's just one of those unlucky ones that missed out on this week. But any thoughts on that team or anybody who was close to it, Richard?
I'm going to shock you and suggest maybe Rory Lawler was unlucky too. I actually thought he was man of the match for Lawrence's on Sunday. I just thought he was involved constantly, carrying ball, shooting, whatever. So he's one that kind of struck me. Probably I didn't see them on a Straven game, and they might be a little bit disappointed only to get 1 in. There's a couple more from Grange, like Fionn Bergen was very. Lee Doyle actually wing forward for Grange of the games I saw was constantly on the ball and driving them forward. In fact, the Nathan Doyle as well was another. You could pick 3 or 4 of the Grange team there. Nathan's chance that he. I wasn't going to mention that, but
I can't wait to talk to Nathan. I genuinely can't. I haven't spoken to him since. I can't wait to slag him over that. God almighty, he'll never do that again. I said it to I was watching, there was a couple of 2 mile house lads beside me, were waiting for the second game. And when he was coming through, I said, the right man has the ball. And as soon as the words are off my lips, he bloody passed it across.
Yeah,
no, he was right. It was a good idea, but still.
Yeah. So I think great. And then just of the other games I saw, I'd just say of the 3 Milltown halfbacks, you could have almost selected any of them. Colin O'Shea, as usual, imperious at centre back, and Liam Kelly getting forward from a Kildare perspective. Liam Kelly scored a super goal, just such a deft finish after a brilliant run through the heart of the defence. And he scored 1 or 2 points as well on top of that. The half back line, in fact, got, I think, 2-4, if I'm not mistaken, for Milltown on the day. And we were talking about the forwards struggling maybe to get the shot selection right. But, that they had cover behind them in terms of scoring. In fact, the half back line scored the first 3 points just to get them off and running when the forwards were struggling early on.
The Seamus, you had nominated, I think, 17 or 18 Suncroft players. We managed to peel it back to...
He nominated himself even, I think.
There was manager of the week and everything.
Physios and everything, yeah. Commentators, the whole lot were all in the rocking chair. But in fairness to
Hugh Martin, though, he deserves a special mention as the young man.
Yeah, absolutely. Like 2-3 or 2-3, I think it was, from centre half forward. He turned out to be the difference, I suppose, between the two teams in the end. And he stepped up to take the opening penalty of the game. And I suppose in his first championship match for Suncroft, it was Fionn was carrying a bit of a leg and he wasn't probably too interested. And Tom, the brother, they were quick to hand it to him, but he took the rebound well. But his overall play and his ability to get into space and a second goal, if anyone that had seen it on Clubber, was a really, really good finish into the bottom corner. But look at it, the two lads in the full back line and the two corner backs, they were... if you said to me going to Clane on Saturday, Leixlip won't score a goal, and that the Lawlers would be, kept to not getting a goal, that was just something. The two lads were like two guys making their debuts there. I know Conor Kiley maybe had made a substitute appearance maybe last year, but young Arthur is only 18 years of age. He was part of the O'Reilly under-16 Kildare panel a few years ago. Came in at half time and did a job on one of the Cavan forwards and looked like he was progressing along the right lines, but didn't make the minor team that particular year, and probably lost to maybe a Kildare minor setup. But really two really good defenders, pacey as well, and deserving of. But as I say, it was a weekend of we could have probably had two teams, I suppose, from all that we had discussed and gone through. But just of all the players that I've heard about and spoke about over the weekend, that one guy that stands out in my mind, and somebody who may be the difference in winning a championship this year, is Owen Boyle, because he picked up a cruciate injury against Suncroft a couple of years ago in the opening 4 or 5 minutes of the game. He's back on top of his game, back in form. And when Rian Tean comes back into that Rathangan side, I think Boyle could be the difference, come the latter end of the championship, that he might just be able to flick Rathangan over the edge to a championship, because he's an outstanding footballer. And, I think I stand to be corrected, but he may have played county minor as well.
Yeah, absolutely he was. Yeah, and he's a big giant of a man as well. So, yeah, great to see all these young talents coming through, and just a couple as well. Sen and Gallagher of St. Lawrence's, I thought, had a very good game, and what probably was his senior championship debut, and also Ollie Deller as well for Down Towers. I'm sure it was probably his senior debut as well. He got a goal after coming on at half time, and indeed could have got a second one laid on as well. So, yeah, great to see these young lads pushing through. But yeah, that's the first loading and lifting Kildare Nationalist Intermediate Football Championship Team of the Week. We'll have plenty more to come as the season develops, of course. But Tommy, I think you also have the top scorers there from the National Electrical Wholesalers. I should know it off by heart at this stage. Intermediate Football Championship, first round there. Some of the lads leading the way.
There we go.
There we are. Second one, yeah. Tom Donovan, as you mentioned, 3 goals and 2 from midfield, 3 goals and a 2-pointer as well. And have to say the first goal I thought was outstanding as well. And there was a clip of Clubber going around, and it didn't actually do Tom full justice, because I think it actually missed his piece of spectacular fielding just in the build-up as well. He caught a wonderful ball in the centre midfield and kept involved in the attack going forward, and then finished off with a wonderful shot into the top left-hand corner. So, yeah, that really was an outstanding performance from him. And Jack O'Reilly as well, Porrick Carty, some outstanding young lads there, Hugh Martin, all those young players up there, Jimmy Hyland too, Paul Maloney as well. And actually one player we didn't mention as well who was very impressive in the feed for a side was the Kerryman, Donagh McKivern as well. He
was just about to say
some left boot on him. He's
I was actually going to say that when we were talking about team of the week, I said that I was going to mention the likes of himself and Jimmy as well. You know, and obviously when players are on the losing team, and then sometimes we take into account the opposition as well and that kind of thing. But like you see Donagh McGivern on his debut for Kilcullen, as you said, the Austin Stacksman championship debut, but scoring 7 points, 2 pointers, you know, six in total from play. When things are not looking great for Kilcullen, and they're not, and Kilcullen people won't be shy but tell you that he is that shining light for them at the moment that he might, but the others need to stand up as well, big time.
Yeah, there's enough young players in that Kilcullen setup maybe to do better than they are. Niall Timmins, I'm sure, will be endeavouring to get more out of them to come. But yeah, that's it for the first round of the Intermediate Championship. Of course, all those round 2 games will be played on the weekend, finishing Sunday, the 23rd of August, so the weekend after next as we record this. And we will have much more, as we said, on those round 2 games on next week's podcast. We'll move on now to the Tom Cross Junior Football Championship. Of course, 3 groups here. And we'll start maybe with that game in Clane in Group A on Saturday afternoon. Seamus, that was your curtain raiser ahead of the Suncroft and Leixlip game, and a very good performance from St. Kevin's. A tight kind of a local derby was expected against Robertstown there, but it turned out to be a pretty one-sided win in the end, and a very good way for St. Kevin's to start their championship as they look for an immediate bounce back to intermediate.
Yeah, Kevin's probably one of the teams that you would look at as maybe favourites before the start of the competition, that with an opportunity maybe to push back up the ladder. But I have to say, in fairness to Robertstown, Kevin's didn't get it all their own way, especially in that opening half. It took Kevin's maybe that half an hour to settle down, get the matchups correct, and then to start push forward. But it was just Barry Noon had corner forward, was absolutely outstanding. I think a return of 2-7 there was just.
We just lost. Sorry, Seamus. That was Barry Noon that you mentioned to score that 2-7. We just lost you there just for a second, I think so. Yeah, Barry Noon.
Barry Noon with 2-7 for the St. Kevin's men. He was outstanding. I think the introduction of Jamie O'Brien and Declan Flaherty, who's back playing this year, brought a bit of composure, a bit of pace into that forward line. Mark Race was outstanding at centre half back, and right across the field. It took Kevin's a while to get it going, but they finished out comprehensively. But you'd have to give Robertstown great credit especially for that opening half. Danny Scully at centre half back was absolutely outstanding. Got forward on 3 or 4 occasions. He got 3 points throughout the game. Murray O'Byrne at centre half forward. It was the other corner forward who, not Percival, the other one. Wasn't
Breon Kennedy?
Pardon?
Breon Kennedy.
Yeah, Breon Kennedy. He kicked the opening 2 points, but he picked up a bit of a knock and he had to come off early, so he was certainly a loss. But look at good win for Kevin's. They'll be delighted they got up and running and 2 points on the board. But certainly give credit to Robertstown for putting up a really good fight. But it was in the second half where Kevin's settled down and pulled away.
Seamus, I was thinking about talking about Barry. You were talking about Barry Noon there. The Moon over 35 soccer team were playing Kyle Dove at the weekend in I think it's the LFA Cup Church. It's the LFA over.
Yeah, I think that was one. Yeah.
Because Moon play in the Carlow League, obviously, and Kyle over in Kildare, so they wouldn't know too much about each other. So I was having a look back at the Kyle Dove results, and I seen obviously Barry plays for them. I think it was the Bowers that scored the 4 goals. One of the Bowers scored the 1-4 to win Kyle Dove. But I said it to my brother-in-law plays for Moon, and I said, "The one lad we missing our main man, Barry Noon. There's no way he'll make the 2 games. He'll probably be playing for St. Kevin's," says I, and he ends up putting in a performance like that. Like, what a super player he's been over the years. Like, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, really, really good now, in fairness. And, his positional sense and everything like that, just playing off lads. Conor Murray at full forward was good. Again, he looked maybe a little leggy, for the want of a better word. He won't forgive me for that. But Conor is a guy who's a dangerous forward in there as well. So the two of them combined really well. And Dylan Brereton, who would be full back on the Kyle Dove hurling team, he operated from centre half forward. So like they have a great bit of pace, experience, size, and strength there as well. So it's they'll be happy with that to get up and running.
Jar,
We'll
sorry,
just stick with
I'm
you.
jumping across you. Jar, I'm really sorry I'm jumping across you again. Just because Conor Murray was mentioned, I have to do this for him because I was talking to him during the week. They're running a golf classic in St. Kevin's. It's one of their big fundraisers, and they are looking for teams. It's in Killeen Golf Club in next weekend or in a couple of weeks anyway. It's 20 something. But if anybody's interested in playing in that golf classic, give St. Kevin's a touch. But you'll see their poster on social media has 3 phone numbers on it. So I just have to say that because Conor wouldn't forgive me if I didn't.
Yeah, for sure. Seamus, we'll just stick with you then as well for that second game in Group A, because you were at that as well on Sunday. Obviously turned out to be very one-sided indeed. Great to see Revan back competing in the championship, but they probably ran into the wrong team in the wrong mood, because Rat Coffee are a serious outfit and have serious designs on being very, very strong contenders again in this year's championship.
Yeah, look at I think the scoreline tells its own story. In fairness to Ribbon, they tried very hard, especially right up till half time. A little bit like Robertstown. Once the goal started to flow, it was just a complete one-sided affair. And it's very hard to find holes or faults in that Robertstown team. They're really, really strong. Joey Toman didn't line out because of injury at centre half back, so he's to come back into the team. And young Rusk, who plays in the goals, he was reportedly injured and wasn't playing beforehand, but only lasted about 5 minutes. So yeah, again, but across the field, Ethan O'Donoghue up in that full forward line himself, Mikey O'Connor and young Moriarty. I think they scored between Ethan and Moriarty. I think they got 5 of the goals, but Ethan, at that level, is just an outstanding forward. I mean, just put it in around that area, and he got the opening goal of the game as well, which was disallowed. But from my reading of the rules, if it comes back off the post or the goalkeeper or anything like that, you can be standing where you like, and the referee blew and gave a free out for a square ball. But look at it. Coffee showed me on Saturday afternoon they're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and with all due respect, I suppose, to Ribbon, they will come up against stronger opposition as the season goes on, but they have certainly savage amount of pace and a scoring threat up front. And I suppose to give one little bit of mention to Ribbon at centre half forward, a young lad, Conor Byrne, he scored 6 points. I spoke to his grandfather after, but he's actually a son of Christie, former Kildare goalkeeper, but certainly a talent and one to keep an eye on as we move down along the way. But he's a really, really good talent and a wonderful score getter as well. I think he possibly got 2 2-pointers throughout the game. But look at it's certainly a very, very young. I think maybe they had 7, if not 8 minors playing Ribbon. So look at they're working hard to keep it going and driving it on from within the club. And Sunday afternoon will be hard to take, but they can take positives from it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Building for the future, and that's good genes to be coming from there for that young born forward as well. I'm sure we'll hear plenty more about him in the future. But moving on to Group B, and we had 2 games there. Kildangan 4-4 against Ballykelly's 1-9. And then, Richard, you were at maybe the game of the whole weekend, I would suggest, possibly. Certainly had one of the most exciting finishes there between Kappa and Castle Mitchell, with Castle Mitchell having a 1-point win, 119-215.
Yeah, certainly would have been up there. Yeah, probably game of the weekend when you think about it and the closeness of it. And I think 2 teams who we kind of would have looked at last week, in terms of possibilities for the junior championship. I know Kappa in particular, probably were, in fact, definitely were the team with the highest league ranking out of all the teams in junior. Curiously, Castle Mitchell were one of 5 Division 4 teams, the top 5, I think, in Division 4, all beat teams who'd been operating out of a higher division last weekend. So, and Castle Mitchell pipped Kappa in this one. they got off to an absolute flyer. They were 7 points to no score up. Now, I mentioned David Lovely getting injured for Kappa at the throw-in. That might have thrown them a little bit. Castle Mitchell had a breeze, but the two Harrises were on fire in particular. Ross had a really, really good start. I think he scored two pointers over the course of the game. James got one as well. Jack McCabe was in great form from a place kicking perspective in particular. So they got off to an absolute flyer, with 7 points to no score up. Kappa came back into it, was still 12-6 at half time. And then Kappa got a goal fairly quickly after the restart through Enon McCauley, their corner forward there. Castle Mitchell came back. Jay Connell, their full forward, got a goal. And they were like 115 to 1-6 at one point, but back came Kappa. Talking about 2 pointers, there was a substitute for Kappa, Cathal Doyle, scored 2 wonderful 2 pointers, obviously under pressure because they were so far behind late on. They drew back level with about 6 minutes left, but Castle Mitchell through McCabe, he scored a wonderful 2 pointer from a free and then another free as well. So eventually got them over the line just about, but great game. Castle Mitchell maybe surprised a few people. Kappa maybe a little bit disappointed. But 2 teams I think we probably haven't heard the last of in terms of the junior championship this year.
And Tommy, we maybe slightly overlooked Kildangan maybe last weekend. Maybe I know 1 or 2 we had comments maybe that they were a little bit overlooked, but they scored 4 goals, and that's a good win for them also to get their championship up and running.
Yeah, I talked them up a little bit too much as well. I had them. I was talking about putting them ahead of Castle Mitchell. Kind of in the overall scheme of things, just the way the league went. Kudos to Ballykelly there, you have to say. I know Kildangan scored the 4 goals. Kildangan are very young, they're a very young team. Obviously there's Daniel Gilbert coming in there. Scoring a couple of goals, including a penalty that he missed. But Ballykelly were disappointed by all accounts to start. They started really well. To really put it up to Kildangan. Because Kildangan would have been confident, absolutely would have been confident. I think a couple of their younger players are really finding out about the championship now. The physicality of the championship, because Ballykelly will never be found wanting when it comes to the physicality either. They love to get stuck in. So you'd kind of think maybe Ballykelly will take something out of that game as well, because there are a couple of tough games coming up. But job done for Kildangan, but huge improvement needed if they want to push into that or stay in the top 2 now that they have that win. But if they really want to push Castle Mitchell and Kappa, they're really, really sad now to hear about David Lovely's injury. One player I was really looking forward to seeing this year after his injury troubles last year. I know he was in with a Kildare development squad as well before his injury. Really looking forward to seeing him, and dreadful to hear that he got injured so early in that match as well. But wouldn't be writing Kappa off just yet.
Absolutely. And then finally in Group C, then we had a big win for our Garvin, 7-25 to 3 points over our clock, and also Ballymore 3-15 against Kills 1-4. That was a really impressive win for Ballymore. But I suppose, Seamus, the big talking point out of that our clock game was the appearance of Conor Mortimer, who at the age of 44 made his debut in the Kildare Championship, kicked 2 points for our clock, but you have to take your hat off to him. It's the love of the game, I suppose, that has him back playing a championship. You couldn't accuse him of being glory hunting or anything like that. He's going in with a side who are probably, with all due respect to them, just doing well to field the team. Obviously well beaten by a ruthless Garvin side, but it just shows you when you have that bug of loving football, as a lot of lads do, it's hard to shake off.
Yeah, look at it. In fairness to Conor Mortimer, just through work, met him a few weeks ago up in the Glenroyal Hotel where he works, and he's the manager there of the leisure centre, but living down in the our clock area, decided to throw his lot in there and maybe give them a little bit of a dig out. And I know numbers had been good, and I think that was the most encouraging thing for our clock this year, was that the numbers out, and he'd have to probably hand a little bit of it to himself, that he probably attracted a few guys back into playing as well. But I think, what did he get, 2 points over the hour? But it was just at Garvin showing their strength and depth, and I think maybe Tommy might have mentioned it off air or whatever, or we did speak, or if our clock can maybe, it'd be great to see them finishing out the championship because of 2 tough games coming up against Ballymore and near local rivals Kill. But disappointing. But Carvin certainly showed their mettle. And again, a bit like Rathcoffey, you can only beat what's put in front of you. But that's a massive scoreline to put up. Very similar to that of Rathcoffey, actually 7-25 and 7-21. And then in the second game, which was the last game on Sunday afternoon, was Ballymore versus Kill. Kill have certainly slipped back down the ladder a little bit since their loss to Ellistown 2 years ago in the junior final. But Ballymore, as we know, once the trapdoor opens and they go down, their main ambition is to get back up as quick as is humanly possible. And they certainly showed all the signs of that there on Saturday evening or Sunday evening. 3-11, really good score line. Some wonderful performances like Ty Barrett at wing back, Shane Barrett in the middle of the field, Callum Barrett with his new position at centre half forward scored 1-3, and then inside you've got the likes of Niall Murphy and Simon Murphy, the 2 Murphys inside, 1-7 and 1-8 to score between the 2 of them. So from that point of view, Ballymore strong. They brought in Mark Barrett then in the second half, and he looks to be in good shape and brings that extra bit of experience to the table as well. So look at good performance from Ballymore. And probably we saw over the weekend at Garvin's, the Ballymores, the Rathcoffeys, the St. Kevin's, the teams that are going to be in the hunt at the very end of the junior championship campaign.
Who's the favourites, lads? Who's your favourite? We can talk about the ones that we know, obviously, but who do you genuinely think? Because the bookies don't give odds. Who do you think, if there were odds put out tomorrow morning, who do you think could be favourites?
Personally, I'd go for Ballymore. Strength and depth. That's my own personal opinion.
Yeah. I'd say the bookies would. I'll stick with St. Kevin's because I went out on a limb last week to pick the team that was just relegated from intermediate. But I just looking at Kevin's result, I'd still feel they're going to be up there. Ballymore, if there was a statement to win, I think it was Ballymore's probably the weekend. Castle Mitchell too. I think I won't say they were written off, but maybe we didn't give them enough credit going into it.
It was a good kill team as well that Ballymore put away. They had I was just looking at the team sheet. They had a lot of lads that have been in this junior championship for a few years, that are still not they're far from past. These are young men, and for Ballymore to cycle them aside like that, pretty impressive.
Rathcoffey as well. I know obviously Revan are very young, so you can't read a huge amount into that, but their side business this year and looking ahead to round 3, if it plays out, that Rathcoffey and St. Kevin's game could be a huge one as well.
Yes, sure. I keep telling myself in my head, so I'm ignoring Ballymore and St. Kevin's. I don't know why, because it makes full sense. Ballymore probably have the strongest team on paper. St. Kevin's have the experience. There's some really good individual players as well. I keep saying Kappa and Carvin, but every time I try to be honest with myself, I just keep going back to how good Rathcoffey have been for the last couple of years, and how it was Grange that were always kind of stopping them. And I know a couple of years ago it was different, but I'm looking at the players that Rathcoffey were able to bring on at the weekend, and players coming back, and I just, if they are fired, if Rathcoffey are firing on all cylinders, I think they could do it. They genuinely could do it this year. It's so I just can't get my head around how I'm not picking Ballymore or St. Kevin's, and I'm opening up my brain every time, and I just keep going to at Garvin. Was that Garvin or Kappa before that result? But I just keep thinking at Garvin, Kappa, or Rathcoffey. Just keeps coming into my head, and Rathcoffey now are starting to push through. I don't know why. Maybe because I've seen more of them.
Tommy, it is that tight, and none of us have seen all these teams in action on a regular basis, so we're just going by what we see from the form. Okay, we've now started to see a bit of action, but I just think the form guide suggests this is, and the history over the last couple of years of this championship has been that it's unpredictable and it's tight and it's hard to win.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that history, though, that draws me to Ballymore as well. They have players who have done it, and they do have kind of history of when they're going well at junior, they can have a very good season. But anyway, we might have a better idea after round 2 because there's some big games there in round 2. And again, we'll look through all them, like the Intermediate Championship and indeed the Senior Championship. They are games in the Tom Cross Junior Football Championship in round 2 will be played in that weekend of Saturday the 22nd and August the 23rd as well, Sunday the 23rd. So there's 22 championship games between Friday, Saturday, Sunday that weekend. So yeah, you may set aside a couple of hours next week to do all the preview on the following week then as well, to do the review as well, because yeah, there's a bumper weekend of football championship action to come there for that weekend. But we'll announce the loading and lifting Tom Cross Junior Football Championship Team of the Week. We'll not announce it, was on our website there yesterday, but we'll go through it here and again maybe explain some of our picks. So again, in goal we have Keith Fitzharris of St. Kevin's, 2 Ballymore men in the fullback line, Tyke Barrett and Callum Ashmore, and Danny Scully of Robertstown complete that fullback line. Into the halfbacks then, Brian Byrne of Castle Mitchell, Paddy Neary of Kildangan, and Dara Devine of Kappa. A midfield partnership then of Rathcoffey man Conor O'Shea and Jamie Smith of St. Kevin's. Further forward then, Ross Harris of Castle Mitchell, Callum Barrett of Ballymore, and Ewan Brown of Atgarvan. And then in the full forward line, Daniel Gilbert of Kildangan, Ethan O'Donoghue of Rathcoffey, and Barry Noon of St. Kevin's. So anyone jump out at you there, Seamus? You saw, I think, more of the junior matches than anybody else between us over the weekend.
No, I suppose there probably could have been 5, 6, 7 more players from the Atgarvans, the Rathcoffeys that could have made it onto that team of the week. But and again, like every time we have to sit back and pick a team of the week, you'll always find that maybe someone gets left out. But yeah, look at it, it's fairly solid from what I had seen across the weekend. I think I've seen 4 matches, 3 on Sunday afternoon and the 1 on Saturday. But yeah, look at some really good performances, as we said. No complaints about the 2 lads in the full back line and Danny Scully. Yeah, they were all worthy of their positions. And so that full forward line, Daniel Gilbert came in as a sub, but showed his power. Like, it was interesting because Kildangan started with 4 guys that had been named to start, but they all came in and made a difference. And that's a little bit of strength and depth in their panel as well. And like Ethan O'Donoghue tells his own story, and Barry Noon we spoke about earlier on, anyone that can hit 2-7 on any given day would definitely be on any team of the week, But I suppose one of the standout guys there for St. Kevin's, when you talk about teams, like there's 3 Smiths, 1 at full back, Jamie there, and Kieran at wing forward, all wonderful athletes. I think we would have known them and seen them before in Ireland's Fittest Family, but yeah, they're supreme athletes, and they're going to make a big difference to Kevin's throughout the season.
Yeah, for sure. So thanks again to Darren and the team at Loading and Lifting for their sponsorship of our teams of the week here in the Kildare Nationalist throughout the season. And we have hinted, I suppose, maybe at having a performance of the week. Maybe it's something that we can formalise ahead of that round 2 and the start of the Senior Championship. But just very quickly, as we go through the 2 championships there, Tommy, is there any one individual or team that would stand out if you were to pick a performance of the week? I'm just going to throw that at you. That was not rehearsed or anything. So I'm just on your toes.
Let it out, Tommy. Let it out.
I know you're going to ask Seamus. There's no point in asking Seamus.
To be honest with you, lads, it's there's no point in me beating around the bush. I mean, Confi getting the job done against Stratham was wonderful. Seamus. They're all. Listen, Confi's results, Confi's performance was fantastic, but there's no looking past Suncroft's performance was absolutely fantastic, and they're rightly getting the coverage this week. I will say as well, just as an overall thing, like the youth, the young players standing up. I mean, if we're looking at that junior team, Paddy Neary in Kildangan, 18, Dara Devine was a Kildare under-20 hurler this year. Ewan Brown is wouldn't put Ewan any more than 20, he could be 19. Another super young talent for Atgarvan, kick 111 I think the weekend. Conor O'Shea from Rathcoffey, pretty sure he's quite young too, could be 19, 20. Didn't feature too much last year for them, but again that's more strength for them. So I just think across the championships, the young players, seeing them coming through, it's wonderful.
You performance of the week, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think Suncroft, in terms of teams, Suncroft produced the surprise, and in terms of gaps, in terms of league status, theirs was probably the biggest gap that they overcame, Division 4 to Division 2 runners up. So, I think it has to be probably Suncroft. But I suppose the one that kind of stood out in a way to me was Monasterevin, and went a little bit under the radar, even in terms of what our reviews earlier. Just, from the start, they were so on top of Kilcullen by the sounds. I didn't actually see the game, but just, the scoreline that they put up, and just to come from Division 4 and the struggles that they had last year to put that result and, by all accounts, performance together, I thought was outstanding. So fair play to them. And then in the junior, probably the one game I saw was Castle Mitchell, so I'd have to call them out. I thought they were excellent against Kappa.
Seamus, your performance of the week?
Yeah, look, I
maybe
suppose
Suncroft, obviously.
I'd have to say it as like Suncroft's victory against all adversity, but I keep going back because a lot of the league slip lads, and I spoke to Jack Travers on Saturday afternoon. You're hard to go out to those guys, because they're all good club footballers, those who have given it at county level as well. But to have your season knocked back and 4 guys in the space of 5 or 6 weeks is tough. But Suncroft, for some reason, every year league form goes out the window, and they're always able to produce some sort of a result. And even though it was surprising to a lot of people, it wasn't within Suncroft. It wasn't surprising, because they are capable of that, and I suppose they did get a little bit of a lift going into it with knowing the way that league slip were. So yeah, from that point of view, you certainly have to pick out Suncroft as the performance of the week. But there were some really good performances at junior level, and Racoffey, Ballymore, St. Kevin's, they were, and an Garvin score. I didn't see that, all really, really good. And I think that point that Tommy made about so many young players coming through, I made a point, and I think it probably was on the podcast going back to the start of July, and I know I've said it elsewhere. Kildare trying to find players, trying to sort out. My point was that we went back to Miko's time when he came here. Every lad in the county got a chance at trials. Everybody got 3 games, and there's certainly some of those young lads coming through who are worthy of an opportunity to put their hand up. If they want to come, if they want to be part of it, because other days they will never be thought of. You'll never get a phone call, or you'll never be spoken to, maybe to get through so many players. But that's my bugbearer, for the want of a better word. Give guys a chance. You never know who you're going to find, and that's something that all those players that I've seen at the weekend deserve an opportunity, and they could be the main men coming down the road. You take a young lad there, and I just see the sheet in front of me, came back from serious injury, was a county minor panelist a few years back, Jack McKay from Castle Mitchell. I saw that young lad dragging that leg around the pitch in Castle Mitchell on many an occasion when I'd be down with matches with my own lads, and to see him back playing, like, what did he score, 8 points at the weekend? Really, yeah, really good talent. And he's, young lad like that, will he be thought of? Will he be seen again? Will he get an opportunity? But that's just something that's been on my mind, and I have said it before. And I just think there is a route to find maybe a better bunch and a better crew of guys who could bring something to the Kildare table as well. But yeah, good weekend at junior and intermediate level, but I'll give it to Suncroft overall.
Yeah, well, for what it's worth, I'll just be slightly different. I'll just go for an individual. I thought Jack O'Reilly in Confi's win was absolutely key to that superb win, and it was great, as we said. That win for Confi was special, but O'Reilly really was superb. He got an early goal, he got a late goal. I think he scored the first 1-3 of the match as well, and absolutely key. So for what it's worth, I'll give him a mention for the performance of the week. And just quickly, just to wrap things up there on last weekend's action, Tommy, you have those scorers there from the opening round of the Tom Cross Junior Football Championship. And yeah, Jack McCabe was one I was going to mention. Seamus, he's probably a little bit hard done by not to get into that team of the week, but I suppose it just shows you the standard that's in that junior championship. When you look at some of the big scores, and okay, Rebel and Garvin were able to run up big tallies, but there's some big scores there, and kind of you're hitting 6 or 7 points, you're not even guaranteed a place in that team of the week. There might be someone hitting 8 or 9 or even more. So it's a very, very high standard indeed among the forwards in that championship.
Yeah, absolutely, Jerry. You said, and we've said it all along, you could have picked another 8 or 10 players to slip in and they wouldn't have been out of place.
Absolutely.
One thing about the junior championship is that these top scorer charts, and it's might as well be honest, like they can be weighted, they can be imbalanced a little bit, because you have young Ewan there putting up brilliant performance against our clock, scoring 111. You know, the same when other teams go to play our clock, you know, it might be a lot different. You know, there might not be a game. We hope that doesn't happen. But then other teams wouldn't be in the same group as our clock or one of the other teams who might rack up these big scores, you know, so it can be a little twisted, so slightly unfair. So when you look down through it, like Jack McCabe's 8 points, you know, you're looking down past Rakoffia, Garvin, like, you know, Connor Byrne again. I'm delighted now that I know that bit of information. I didn't know that was Christian's son. That's absolutely fantastic to hear that. But him putting up 6 points, brilliant. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. Ross Harris's performance against Kappa. So just it can get a little imbalanced, and it was mentioned to me kind of as a joke a couple of weeks ago how players can run up big tallies and then stay at the top of the table, but it is what it is. But it's it'll level itself out, Joe.
Absolutely, yeah. Everybody will play everybody, I suppose, through the groups. So yeah, there will be some sort of a leveling out process through that championship. Yeah, so that's it for the opening round of the men's football championship, the first weekend of men's football championship. As I said, what a weekend! The store the weekend after next. 22 championship games. We'll have a lot to look forward to. But also this week, we saw on Tuesday evening the start of the ladies football championships as well. Pat Costello, of course, unfortunately not with us today, but he was at the game between St. Lawrence's and Kilcullen, as you can see there on the screen. Ciara Dempsey there of county champions St. Lawrence's. They had a good win against a semi-finalist from last year, 5-11 to Kilcullen's 2-8. So really impressive win for the county champions to start off with. Avian O'Sullivan scored 2-2. Marie Keeley, of course, the Wicklow woman, scored 2-1 as well. And the other goal scored by Gillian Wheeler as well. So a good start for St. Lawrence's. And elsewhere in the senior championship, also scoring 5-11 in a win was Sarsfields, but that seemed to be a right game against Maynooth there, Tommy. Sarsfields 5-11, Maynooth 5-9. But yeah, St. Lawrence's up and running there. Sarsfields 2. And yeah, if they avoid each other, you'd imagine they could well meet in a final, perhaps down the line, if you look a little bit further.
Yeah, I was looking at the Sarsfields team sheet again that was put up, and they are looking very, very strong. I think every year, you know, it's like, again, see how each town kind of go, but there's something about that Sarsfields team this year. They really are, you know, they really are showing what they have. And like, even you haven't got Roisin Byrne kind of starting there yet. I mean, she's probably getting ready to fire on all cylinders as well. But it's interesting, Jar. Like, I mean, we talk about all those results the weekend, but everything keeps coming back to Catherine Murphy, doesn't it? For her performance the other night for a tie.
Yeah, well, there were two individual performances that I wanted to mention further down the championships, if you like. Just to mention, sorry, the other two results just in Group B of the senior championship were Ballina, two away wins actually. Ballina away to Suncroft 4-15 to 2-10, and also Carberry had a big win down over Kill 4-23 to 2-3. But yeah, Tommy, as you mentioned, there were two individual performances that I think are really worth highlighting. One, if we mentioned already, Aoife Radigan scoring 3 2-pointers in Kappa's win in the intermediate championship over Confi 120 to 1-7. But as you were saying there, Catherine Murphy, who of course only under 16, she was part of the All-Ireland winning side just a few weeks ago. She scored an incredible 6 goals and 6 points of a ties 6-11 total. And she was a busy girl because last weekend she was involved with the Leinster under-18 rugby squad as well, as they took on Munster in the under-18 inter-provincials. But yeah, to go and do that in a junior championship game at such a young age, she's a special talent.
Big time. I mean, we were in Cavan, we were in Athlone for the Cavan game, and I mean, she could have had a hatful of scores, you know, and she was, I don't even know if she was 100% fit. that day. So she has a wonderful talent that she's obviously going very well at the rugby at the moment. But it's great for Athy to have them there. I mentioned Athy on the podcast last week as well. But then Aoife Ratkin, absolutely, three 2-pointers. If a lad did that intermediate or junior championship, we'd be raving about it. I don't think anybody did that in championship. A couple of lads hit 2 of them all right, but for Aoife to do that, there was so many times this year that I'd be seeing Aoife Ratkin pick up the ball out distance. I just, even in the Leinster final in Croke Park, I just said to Ash, because I was like, wait till see this one now. If she gets a chance to shoot from distance, she's wonderful boot on her. She'll be huge. She'll be absolutely massive for Kappa going forward as well. So as well, just looking at the results earlier, Jar, as well, that Selbridge drew at Milltown in the Junior A Championship. Milltown always very strong, probably one of the favourites for Junior A. That's a very good sign for Selbridge. We have some good young players coming through as well. Because I don't really know much about them. They always seem to kind of struggle to get up the grades. For such a big club. But by all accounts, in that match against Milltown, they were impressive. To keep an eye on. I think that Junior A Championship actually could be a right championship to keep an eye on. Because I know obviously we'll be talking plenty about the senior and about the intermediate, but there's some big clubs down that Junior A. Moorfield fell like a stone after they got relegated there a few years ago, back to the old format, but they went all the way down to Junior A, so they'll be looking to get back up. Obviously I mentioned the tie in that, but there's just something about that Junior Championship when you see the teams are in it. Could get pretty tasty as the weeks go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to follow up on that Aoife Ratkin point as well, we have an interview with her up on the Kildare Nationalist website. And it's a very interesting interview. She discussed, I suppose, her belief that obviously there was a lot of discussion about whether that 40-metre arc was having an impact on the ladies' game, but she believes that there's plenty of players capable of kicking from that sort of range, and it just needs a bit of an adjustment period, and players will get more used to it and look to make more of an advantage of it as time goes on. So, yeah, she also mentioned her new position on the inside line in the Kildare team and how she enjoyed playing there after initially being a little bit unsure, but she said Pat Sullivan, the Kildare manager, got a lot of confidence into her. So, yeah, very interesting read for Aoife Ratkin. That was an excellent start to her championship. And, yeah, I suppose we'll just move on then maybe to this weekend's action then as well, because it is a new schedule that we have. Sorry, excuse me, before we go on to... No, we are going on next to this weekend's action. Sorry, Tommy, I don't know if you have the fixtures there, but the new schedule with Kildare GAA, the championships, are because are hurling and football alternating each weekend, and the senior championship doesn't start until the following hurling weekend. Actually, the lead up to that weekend, the following weekend will be the August 29th, Saturday the 29th, which is the electric picnic weekend. So I think the senior championship starts midweek there. So we do have the intermediate championship getting round 2 played on this weekend. So it's Moorfield and St. Lawrence's in round 2, Broadford versus Maynooth, and Leixlip versus Naas. That Leixlip-Naas game could be a right match there on Sunday evening in Mangard Park there, Richard.
Yeah, I think Leixlip had that good win over Maynooth. Was it 3 points the last day? So they're in. They certainly got off to a good start, and they kind of needed to get that result, given that they had Naas coming up next. But I think Leixlip will be confident. They put in a good show. Obviously, last year got to the final when this was the Senior B Championship. Lost just by that late point to Clane. So they come into this in good shape. Obviously, have lost Jack Travers. Jack Travers is going to be in the senior team. So apologies. Talking through my what there. Leixlip, I think, as I say, just lost by a point to Clane last year, got off to a good start. Naas, are strong at all levels, first team, second team. Obviously, they can't go up from this championship, but, that's going to be a bit of a humdinger at the weekend. The one that intrigues me is maybe Broadford and Maynooth. Broadford got that good win against Larry's, 10 points the last day. Maynooth lost out to Leixlip, and I know it's their B team, so but still they'll be looking to get a win here to climb up that table and get into the into a good top 4 position there. Moorfield and Larry's then both after defeats. Moorfield very disappointing the last day. Larry's probably as well only scored 6 points against Broadford, so very important for either of those teams to get up and running this week.
Norris should be back to Moorfield anyway.
Yes, as I said, he came on there for Rathangan and football there late in their game last Sunday. If you want to move on then to the intermediate championship, then Tommy, the standout tie, the one that catches the eye there is a tie v Round Towers. Not a football game, but two clubs who are doing a lot to get hurling up and running. Obviously, Round Towers have only got hurling going themselves in their club in the last couple of years. They're still pretty new to it as well, but a tie will field the team in a championship game for the first time, I believe, in almost 20 years. Again, we'll have something on the website tomorrow morning. We get a piece in the paper as well during the week. We spoke to Paul Whelan, but yeah, fantastic to see a club like a tie, a catchment area like a tie, trying to get hurling going in the club, and I suppose fitting that they're facing off against a team like Towers who are doing very similar themselves.
Yeah, it is. It's brilliant. It's interesting. I'd say that on that tie team, you probably had a midfield of Michael Foley and Adrian Kelly, possibly. Keith Kern from Castledermot was a wonderful hurler as well. Lives in Canada now, but Adrian Kelly is playing for St. Lawrence's. I was wondering actually this year when I heard a tie were coming back, I was wondering would Adrian be tempted to go back to a tie? Would Michael Foley be tempted to come out of retirement? I'm really interested to see the team sheet. Pretty sure Ross Bell played hurling back in the day as well. John O'Connor, formerly of Castle Mitchell. Johnny Flynn, former Wicklow goalkeeper, who played obviously for Castledermot as well. Johnny was a great. Johnny Flynn and John O'Connor used to battle out to take the spot in goals. Just great years for a tie, because obviously Castledermot used to send over a few players there as well. Just so they were amalgamated at, well, not underage, or only amalgamated for the under 21s and the minors. But a tie had a wonderful hurling tradition. It was great going over there. They were mad for hurling. Tony Foley, obviously. Tony, Michael's dad, Mick's dad. Tony just ran everything. I still see him at matches. And then obviously Rose and Jimmy Kern from the Castledermot side. It's just brilliant to see them back. Spice took so long. But you can see what Round Towers have done in the last couple of years, the work they've put in. That first match that they played a couple of years ago, I remember them sending me the team sheet and saying, can you put this up? Look at all the lads that we've got back playing, and to actually play a hurling this weekend, to line out, it's class to see it. And then obviously Rathangan as well. Even Sarsfield, Sarsfield dipped away there for a couple of years, then came back. Surely you see when you see how well Moorfield have gone, a couple of years ago. Obviously they're amalgamated underage as well. So to see all these teams, it's great. And obviously Ross Glass, a proud, very proud hurling club as well. They'll be looking to try claw their way back up to where they used to be as well.
Just on a tie, I mentioned the tradition there. I was just reminding myself earlier in the day about some of that tradition. Like the tie have actually won the Kildare Championship more recently than two of the teams that are at senior level at the moment. Don't know if you can know them, if you can mention them. Plain is one. Plain haven't won for a long time. Maynooth is the other. So a tie most recently won it in 1959, and they've been in 9 finals all told. So there is a good tradition there. Now Tommy will probably say that those were all Castledermot men playing for them. I'm not sure.
No, back then Castledermot had their own hurling team. I was only talking about that little pocket of the late 90s, early 2000s.
I was talking about back in the 50s. I'm not sure where.
No, I know you can remember that, but no, that's a little too far back for me.
But they don't wear red in the hurling.
No, what's that all about, Tommy?
So to be completely honest with you, I don't know if they're going to wear maroon, but a tie hurling was always maroon.
I saw some photographs, some marketing beforehand.
Jersey presentation, Richard.
Yeah, that's what it was. They were maroon.
Good. I'm actually I'm delighted to hear that now, because that is good. That's what they were.
The other thing, lads, is that Rathangan Ross Glass game is off at the weekend as a mark of respect to that Heavey woman. that died there during the week in that tragic accident. She's actually a twin sister of Christy Kay, who would have been involved with he'd be Paddy Ryan's grandfather. Nicky, the son, owns the Harp Bar, and Trina in Kildare Town. We would have had them on during the year, but it's very tragic and sad, and that affects a lot of people across the Monasterevin and surrounding areas. So condolences to everybody there.
Yeah, absolutely, huge condolences, but just a much more insignificant matter after that, just as the fallout of that, the Rossglass and Rotangi game obviously postponed. That was due to throw in at 3:30 p.m, but the knock-on effect of that game being cancelled is that a tie-in round Towers now will be throwing in at 3:30 and will act as a double header with the intermediate game between Leixlip and Naas to follow that at 5 p.m. So that's all the weekend ahead. Actually, as I said, that is kind of a quite enough weekend with just those few hurling matches schedules before that madness of the following weekend.
Just one thing. Sorry, Jared, just before you go away from the hurling, I'm sorry. And I think, Richard, you had it right, but then you doubted yourself maybe. But that Leixlip versus Naas match is Leixlip's first game, actually.
Yeah. No, I was confusing myself there. You're right. It is the first.
Yeah, because the Senior B went this year. I know, but sure. Yeah. So that sets up for a really good game, as you said. But that's all, Jared.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, just the last thing to mention was, I suppose, with half an eye on a Kildare man, obviously there's a lot of news about Cian O'Neill down in Kerry. It does seem that his spell as Jack O'Connor's right-hand man is coming to an end, and it appears as if potentially Cork Hurlers is the next spot for Cian O'Neill. But more, I suppose, pertinently for Kildare GAA, lads, are we a little bit disappointed that we haven't heard even murmurings really of any changes or otherwise to the Kildare management setup? I suppose we have heard very slim kind of rumours of different things happening. There are, I suppose, a lot of wheels being turned in the background, but as of yet, nothing really coming to the surface, and certainly not anything confirmed about we're assuming that Brian Flanagan will be staying on, but in terms of anybody else behind him in the management team and the setup elsewhere, there doesn't appear to be anything close to being confirmed at the moment. But are we a little bit disappointed that there hasn't been anything else forthcoming so far?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's a case of I'm disappointed that I haven't heard of any changes. I don't think that's really fair. I think it's a disappointment in a lack of any confirmation at all. I know it's easy for people to say, it was only July and into August, but when you see counties moving, it really pushes to the top of the agenda again. When you see Kerry kind of not hanging around, and the fact that it was so public, obviously it resonated more with us because it was Cian O'Neill involved. But yeah, because we hear countless things. We hear people sending you messages, you read it on forums, you hear people talking. I feel like it would show us that I know there is a lot going on. There's testing going on at the moment. There's players coming in for different testing. That's testing as well. It's not like full S&C stuff. That's seeing where players are and getting the stats in. But that's a good sign that that's going on. I know a lot of people don't agree with it. People think this is people are contradicting themselves then as well, because in one way people are saying online, it's like, oh, we've heard nothing, there's nothing happening. And then the other side, you have people coming out saying, what are they doing testing lads in July? There's putting lads at risk of injury, which obviously we've heard there has been one or two injuries, but they have to start, and they have started early. And my worry was with the lack of any announcement and the lack of any confirmation on whether it's the same management team, which should be fine. This it's just to get the announcement would be grand, or if there are changes. Because my fear was that this was dragging on for a couple of months. That would mean that Kildare stuff would be starting later. And also, if there are new guys coming in, they would have needed to be there last weekend, those championship matches. That's vital. If there are a couple of coaches coming in, now maybe there's not. Again, we have to go back to this. We don't bloody know. But if there are new coaches coming in, and I'm not even talking coaches, if there's somebody at S&C, everybody involved, if there's a new face involved in a Kildare senior football setup, they needed to be at matches last weekend. So have they been confirmed? I didn't see too many new faces knocking around at matches last week. Have they been confirmed? Is there something kind of in the pipeline? we don't know, Ger. That's the frustrating thing at the moment for fans and media.
Yeah, Richard, I would suggest there is a county board meeting, I believe, in September. I think that's Tuesday the 1st, I think, about 3.5 weeks away. Yeah, it's normally the first Tuesday of the month, so I'm assuming that it will be the 1st of September. I would suggest that I would think we would be hearing something by then. If we wouldn't, I certainly would be disappointed, whether it's, confirmation of the status quo remaining or anything changing. I would imagine I'd be very surprised if there wasn't some sort of an announcement brought to the clubs that day. And if there wasn't, I would certainly envisage clubs making some sort of point about the lack of confirmation of where we stand.
Yeah, and we referred to it before. I think there's a couple of things. I think one is the Kerry thing does definitely trigger in a supporter's mind. You're kind of thinking, well, Kerry are 3 weeks out from an All-Ireland. They've made their decisions already. They're moving forward. This is what they're doing. So there's kind of a seriousness of professionalism almost about it. And from a supporter's perspective, supporters pay a lot of money, and there's a lot of money spent on a senior football team. And it's maybe it's a kind of an Irish thing, is to do things quietly in the background and not talk about it. And this isn't the Premier League, so there's a certain element that you'd say that's fine. But the whole sport has become so professional, spending a lot of money on it, etc. these days. And so I think supporters are entitled to have an understanding of what's going on. There's been no communication whatsoever. Like, even to say we're carrying out a review, it's going to take 3 weeks. These are the people that are carrying it out. We'll feed back to the clubs in September what the results are, what our proposals are following that. Although it shouldn't be as late as September, I'd argue. But none of that happens. So what happens in September? The clubs are put in a position where it's effectively a fait accompli. Here's what the structure is going to be. Here's what the management is going to be. There's not going to be any room for real discussion about what happened last year. And I think that's my biggest frustration with the whole thing is, and that gets back to having September as your next county board meeting after June. It's just not serious. It's not taken seriously. The clubs are not treated, I don't think, with the right respect in that scenario. And I don't think the clubs were treated with the right respect in June when they brought up the issues that they brought up. I said that before. So, but to Tommy's point, I think the biggest concern for me is, are we losing time and losing ground with the club championships having started? And, maybe we do have the coaching team and the selectors in place for next year. We just don't know about it. But I think, Clubber obviously will cover some ground. People can go back and look at Clubber videos, but there's nothing like watching games in the flesh. So I think that's kind of my concern with it. It just when you see the Kerry situation, and again, they haven't come out with a big announcement as to here's what the change is, but you can see that there's action happening there. And you just no one knows what's happening in Kildare. Maybe it's all happening and is all sorted out. Not sure.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Seamus. I'm sure there are things happening behind the scenes. We have asked questions and stuff. There's nothing ready, that we can go to print with. We haven't anything confirmed or anything like that. But I suppose it is the lack of communication. And I suppose when there is that void to be filled, people obviously will have their own views on it. That's where rumors get started and different things, and frustration can set in then as well. But I'm sure there is work happening behind the scenes. But as I said, maybe, as Richard has kind of pointed out there, maybe there should be some form of communication and let people have an idea of what is happening.
Yeah, look, it's been a summer, I suppose, of discontent, a summer of probably frustration for clubs, supporters, and the media, I suppose. Look, nobody has to be told the full ins and outs, but even to have had a feeling that something's been going on. Now, somebody said to me last weekend, and I don't like saying this, but they said supporters, clubs, we're like mushrooms. Fill them full of shit and keep them in the dark. And that's something that was said to me last weekend. And whether you like that or don't like that, but that was exactly what was said. Somebody fairly prominent who we would always see at matches, and just a feeling that we're no further on. We don't know where we are, or if the same setup was there, we've all heard rumours that part of the management team have gone, some of the S&C team have gone. I think I confirmed that definitely one of them have left the setup. But as Tommy said, probably the most disappointing thing is the season is up and running. We don't know where we stand. That was never, I suppose, the situation in the past. The finger will probably be pointed at the county chairman. He has taken 4 weeks holidays, we were led to believe, and it's been a quiet time. So like the next 2 weeks, or maybe this coming weekend, we'll address the situation and you know, put everybody in the picture and let us move on, because it's an important season. Like, I mean, we're in Division 3. There's a lot of work to be done to get us out of there. And I don't know, you know, where Brian Flanagan's thoughts are in all of this. I presume to a certain extent he knows that what's going on, but I think everybody else deserves the respect and to know exactly where Kildare stand and what's happening and what the setup is for next year. And as I said, hopefully that'll come over the next couple of weeks. But at the moment, it is frustrating, and it has been certainly a summer of discontent and frustration.
Yeah, Richard, you're somebody who likes to get knee deep in the archives and go back through old papers and read back through old county board meetings and everything else. But you know, very often those meetings that were held over the summer, and there would have been one per month going back in time, they were often the times, you say, where the clubs demanded there was a review. And you know, we said it in June when there obviously were a couple of points raised at the June County Board meeting. Obviously, Brian Flanagan was a little bit unhappy about the timing of that, but you know, we said at the time that, you know, by the time September rolls around, it's very hard to have any meaningful debate. Clubs obviously are the focus at that stage as well, and you know, you can't go away from the September meeting and come back and kind of discuss it with the clubs to vote on anything like that. So it is a little bit kind of awkward for clubs to really lay out their points of view in the current setup.
It is. It's kind of it's almost a structural lock on clubs having their say, if you like, just having that 3 month gap, because as I say, it comes back as almost a fait accompli, and there's no room for debate or discussion. And I don't necessarily mean criticism. I mean, you know, positive debate and input on the future of Kildare GAA, and I suppose football in particular, because that's where we had the difficult year. Now, a difficult year with positives at underage, it has to be said, but you know, the senior team is the most important, and that's where we've struggled. So yeah, you're right. I mean, in the past, you know, the county board meetings were a lot more interesting, shall we say, in terms of some of the debates that happened. They were more regular at times as well. And the media were probably also a lot tougher on both county board meetings and, you know, even in terms of reporting on matches, if you see that as well. So, you know, we do live in slightly easier times if you're a county board official or a player. But yeah, I just think that this silence for 3 months, apart from anything, like if there was some form of announcement or communication, or you knew what was happening, then that would drive interest in the club championships that are happening now. You know, if you could see there was a plan and here's what's happening for next year, then you might get more people out to the club championships as well. So it's kind of self-defeating in a way.
Yeah, Tommy, I'll leave the last word to you then. How would you see, or what would you like to see happen in the next couple of weeks, I suppose, if we use that county board meeting as a bit of a cut-off point?
Well, there's the county board meeting thing is just, it annoys me. It always annoys me. And it's because I don't think our clubs are vocal enough. You know, obviously I don't go to them, you know, but I read, be it a summary from Pat Costello in the Kildare Nationalist, or be it Tommy Callahan in the Leinster Leader, to do put summaries together, and it always seems to be one or two delegates, you know, the delegate from Rathcoffey or the delegate from Leixlip or whatever, and like there's a lot of clubs in Kildare, you know, and it's just, I don't think they're vocal enough, and I don't think, I mean, they should have demanded some kind of a meeting. Like Mick Mullen's entitled to his holidays as well, he has a life, but he doesn't necessarily, you know, there's a vice chairman and there's a secretary and there's people that can take
development officer.
Yeah, exactly. Just these like I'm not going to say an EGM, but like, you know, just a kind of we're just going to have a meeting of the county board delegates just to keep everything. You know, I mean, there's probably people listening to this laughing at me saying he doesn't know what he's talking about, because you know he doesn't know the structure of these meetings. But you know, there's structures in place in county executives. You know, there's hierarchy. There's people there. There's very experienced people involved in Kildare at the moment, you know, that can organise some kind of meeting like this. I will say when the September meeting comes around, Richard's point was very important when he said that there's going to be so much to pack into this meeting. That's probably going to be a case of, here's what the story is. Any questions, at the end, which I don't think is fair. I think there should be a forum there for the clubs that's a lot more open. On a night, be it maybe 2 weeks after county board meeting, maybe 2 weeks before. Just get all the clubs together and speak about what's been going on behind the scenes in Kildare, what the plans are, because I know that's going to happen at the county board meeting, but there's a lot to fit in there, and there's going to be a lot of time filled up there with the championships, with the structure of the championships and all this kind of stuff. So, I don't know, George, just to answer your question, I'm hoping to hear something, be it official, be it from somebody in the Kildare setup that tells the media something, tells you guys something. It's a long way to wait till September, and then the next county board meeting after that in October, when we're well deep in our county championships, and when every other county across the country are in the shadows starting their training. So hopefully we hear something over the next couple of weeks, but wouldn't hold my breath. The most important thing is that Brian Flanagan has his team together in the background, whether we know it or not, and stuff that's happening. That's the most important thing. Yeah. It's not that we know. So we have something to talk about. It's a case that if we get told in September, oh lads, this was sorted out 2 months ago, grand. We'll have a little bit of a moment, why weren't we told? But as a Kildare fan, I'd be very happy to hear that.
Yeah, well, in fairness, I think to Brian Flanagan, I'm sure those conversations are happening in the background, and hopefully you would like to think anyway that as soon as things are confirmed that we would be told and would be given that information. But maybe for the moment, Brian Flanagan perhaps juggling a couple of plates and trying to get everything in place, and I've no doubt that he is certainly working hard behind the scenes and trying to get all that in place. And as I said, hopefully we will know it, and as soon as we know it, we'll of course let all of our listeners and readers know as well. So that's about it. We've had got an almost 2-hour podcast when we've had just a couple of championships to look back upon, as well, the hurling as well, and the ladies as well. God, we're going to have maybe a 4-hour podcast over the next couple of weeks when we've got 22 football matches to look forward to and then review as well. So hectic time ahead.
You think the September county board meeting will be packed? Wait till that busy weekend. I don't know how we're going to have it.
Yeah. I got England as well. So yeah, so
great.
Yeah, I leave it for you. But anyway, we'll be back next week to look forward to all those games. We'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure, and obviously reviewing those hurling championship matches that we played this weekend too. But for now, thanks indeed for listening to the Shortgrass podcast. If you have any thoughts or comments, do comment on either our social media pages on the Kildare Nationalist or the YouTube page, and do like, share, and subscribe as well wherever you listen or watch onto our podcast. We always appreciate any thoughts or comments or any subscribers as well. It's always good to have everybody on board. As I said, we've got a very busy time coming up in the club championship, so we'll be doing our very best to keep you up to date with everything that's happening. But for now, thanks to the lads, and thanks for watching and listening.